Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Khalid and Tatjana Show. We are your hosts, Khalid bin Walid and the amazing
Tatjana de Queiroz.
Tatjana. What do we have on our lined up for our podcast today?
So we've got a really interesting agenda today because so much has happened in the world. So rather than focusing and deep diving on one topic, as we've done in previous episodes, today we've decided to go over a couple of headline news, which have been, you could say, rocking not only the Twitter sphere, but really making the news globally. So we'll be talking about, speaking about the Twitter sphere, we're going to be talking about Twitter going down this week. Then we're going to be moving on to International Women's Day, because I think this has made some waves around the world. And you and me both, we have a lot of opinions on this.
Definitely do.
And then we'll be talking about news, old news, which has been resurfacing in India regarding His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and his efforts of de-radicalization. Except, how long ago did that happen, Khalid?
Over 5 years ago, basically.
Over 5 years ago. But the Indians are catching on and it's actually making the rounds. So, news is news. And then we'll be going into two much more serious topics, which is what is happening in Syria at the moment, what's happening with the new government, disinformation, a number of different things. And of course, we are going to round up with the US-Ukraine peace talks, which happened in Jeddah just a couple of days ago in Zelensky's meeting with the Crown Prince. How does that sound, Khalid?
Sounds good. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get right into it. So for International Women's Day, I actually was the one who was showing you this tweet.
Yes.
This woman, Riley Gaines, her claim to fame was she fought against the tyrannical trans movement.
Is she American?
Oh yeah. She basically lost to a boy claiming to be a girl and was very sour about it, and then started a full-on movement.
Oh, that famous trans university swimmer.
Yeah.
The guy who ranked like 400th when he was a guy and then started beating all the university competitions, and who kind of accelerated the movement a little bit about trans people in sport. Shall we put it?
Yeah. Well, not to get too much into that weird topic, but anyways, so Riley, she has this tweet right here, and I quote, "This International Women's Day, we stand with the women of Afghanistan, Yemen, Iran, and Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and all other countries where women, ... are denied education and literacy, are forced into marriage as young as 9 years old, cannot show their skin/hair/face in public, cannot speak to unrelated men, and are deprived of fundamental human rights. I'm sickened at the weak international response and silence from," I quote, "feminists. Groups of women are left with fewer rights than dogs in many Middle Eastern countries. At least dogs can bark. Sharia law is evil, and the Taliban needs to be eradicated." I don't know about you, but I was really emotional reading that.
So you're going to tell us what you responded. And then we're going to get into a discussion about this, because I'm a woman. I have lots of opinions.
Well,
What did you respond, Khalid?
Well, I'm not going to say my response because, we might get demonetized. But I will tell you my sister's response to that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a little sister. She's about 18 right now. Shout out, little sis. And she saw this tweet and she just said, "Oh my God, who is this person? Oh my God, she's so rude. No, no, she is so rude. Who's this white lady that's gonna come and save us?"
And ladies and gentlemen, this comes from an 18-year-old Saudi Arabian woman, well, young woman who doesn't need saving.
Mm, yeah. Well, before I get into my actual response to that, that's rebuttal, actual Saudi response, what's your take on that? Let's hear it.
Well, I've always been very much on the fence, anyways, about having an International Women's Day because I think women should be celebrated every day. If we're going to go for equality, I don't believe there's an International Man's Day. So women should be celebrated every day, specifically in Western societies who call themselves absolutely equal and all that. Culturally, I like receiving flowers on International Women's Day, but then I always like receiving flowers. But no, but more seriously, what she's stating is this such closed-minded viewpoint of somebody who's never been to the Middle East, where it's practically fundamentally racist. And I can say, as a woman, towards that, I'm going to respond. There are very few countries where there's no education and literacy for women. Unfortunately, Afghanistan is one of them. And some other countries, which aren't even majority Sharia or Muslim, also have issues like this, such as India. Secondly, women's rights is being able to wear whatever you want to wear. If you want to cover up,
that point,
yes.
and at that point, let's look at what the Saudi response to
Tell me.
thing was. Well, we have our young hero. Her name is Jenna Arifi. She's 16 years old, and she came up with a new way to produce green hydrogen using ammonia. She's the youngest ever member of the NEOM science team,
Yeah.
and she was the speaker at the UN. We're going to put that clip right there, and let's watch.
Let's watch.
To the support of my family, my country, and to all the stakeholders around the world that worked hard to support young women like me. My journey began with a curiosity, a passion for scientific research, specifically renewable energy, and what started as a participation in regional competitions soon opened doors for international opportunities and awards, opportunities I had only once dreamed of.
So, Tatjana, what do you think?
Look, I think she represents the voice of a generation. Clearly, towards what this Riley was saying, it's not particularly targeted at Saudi Arabia, but it's targeted at most women in countries which she views as not promoting Western standards of human rights. And this young lady represents a new generation of STEM women having the opportunity to go and speak at the UN, being a founder who's probably going to go on and have an amazing career and be recognized by her country. I just like to ask the question, how many European countries or the US actively promote not just women, the young women under the age of 16 and 17 and give them the opportunities to go to the US, to go and speak at the UN, to really showcase them? How many of them do that?
Well, I wouldn't know because, it's not really something I intently look at. I'm more concerned with our young men and women. And all I could say is they are showing their chops, whether it be in science, whether it be in technology, whether it be in sports. And they make it very easy to feel proud of them, is all I'm going to say.
And you know what's kind of amazing now is before, dare I say, in your time, if you wanted to work in science and tech, etc., become a founder, you probably had to go somewhere else. You did probably have to go to the West or to the US with the scholarship programs. That is the reality of what it was 10, 15 years ago.
For sure.
Today, not anymore. Today, really not anymore.
I mean,
And
so many young people, when I do ask them, people who are at that age where they're going to choose to go to university, and I ask them, where do you want to go study? My generation or previous generation, they'd all say either the West or the East, you know, and the majority of the people I'm asking are all telling me they want to go to Saudi universities. Okay, they might not have the international recognition, you know, but let's look at the facts. The facts are that they're bringing talents and teachers and
who are
doc-
international.
who are international. They get to study in somewhere that they feel comfortable and safe, specifically young women. They don't feel safe going into Europe right now. The, all of the young women I'm talking to, that's what they're saying. They're saying, I don't feel that, you know? And it's sad because I think it makes something missing from this science and cultural exchange, which
Of course,
is
because
the
having
bedrock of going to university, you know?
of course, and having this international side, this international exchange, I think for any student, wherever you come from, is so important because you learn different perspectives, different things. But I agree with you that today, and that happens in a lot of countries, if your intent is to stay in your home country, you may as well go to university domestically where the local culture, the teaching curriculum, etc., is going to be the same, where organizations you want to work for or are going to recognize them regardless. But what I'm curious and look forward to seeing is probably more exchange program with non-European and non-US countries. We're going to merge also because there's starting to be a lot of students who are coming from other countries to Saudi Arabia. You know, it started with KAUST, KFUPM. You know, it's true. People who aren't in the oil and gas industry maybe don't really realize how KFUPM is probably one of the best universities globally to go and study if you're going to work in the oil and gas sectors.
For sure, for sure.
So-
And I don't know if you know this, but Saudi, for a couple of years now, one of the elective languages you can take is Chinese. So I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of exchange in a few years down the line. You know,
And there's also a lot of Saudi students going to Russia also to go and study. So I think we're going to be seeing more international student ties. But going back to International Women's Day, I mean, it's great that other type of women are showcased. But I said it myself, as a woman, I don't need a day to celebrate inequities in society. There's always going to be inequities. There's structural inequities and structural inefficiencies in each and every country. What I need as a woman is to be able to have the choice and liberty to pursue whatever suits me best equally. This is what I want as a woman. So if I want to stay at home and raise a family, I have the opportunity to stay at home and raise a family. And I can tell you, as a Western woman, I don't have that opportunity. It's frowned upon in society. So let's think about that a little bit. But why don't we jump on to our next subject, which is Twitter went down.
how much you take this one? You want to introduce it?
Well, I'm going to be doing a bit of a public service announcements. For some of you who follow me, you've noticed that my Twitter account has been very quiet over the last 3 days. It's because my account was locked and hacked during this period, and I don't have access. So There's going to be a link to my new Twitter account. I'm trying to work with Twitter, who, by the way, are being so ineffective. I've had this account
Atrocious.
for 14 years. For 14 years. We've had an amazing community and group of followers, and I'm probably going to have to move us to this account. So please follow me on this new account. But rumors are, I mean, you know this best, but rumors are it was a DDoS attack, or do you call it a DOS attack?
DDoS, yes, DDoS attack. I that's my thoughts when I first saw it, because it wasn't down, it was just slow, it was choppy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are two camps. Some tell you that it was foreign intervention, foreign state actors that did this DDoS attack. I don't see that, simply because anybody with a cybersecurity background will tell you that foreign state actors don't use such a low-tech approach to bring a site or a website down.
Okay.
They use something a lot more sophisticated and a lot more expensive. This is very cheap. There is another camp that says this has been done because of the turmoil that's happening all over the world. Syria, people are starting to talk against the US government, against the UK government. So they just wanted everything to calm down a little bit. I personally think it was just a bunch of kids that just wanted to screw with Elon Musk. He's not becoming very popular, is he?
Well, he hasn't been very popular in a while. I mean, I'm tempted. So here it's very important to say we really speak and we really try to highlight facts, although we also do highlight our opinions, but we don't spread misinformation. So I'm going to underscore what is my opinion. I do think I tend to go in camp number 2, which is Twitter got shut down for a couple of hours just to reduce the noise of everything that's been happening. That's the conspiracy theorists in me, but also it's because my account obviously got reported by bots quite a bit and people who don't really like what I'm tweeting about. So it's back up and running. I think it goes to show, though, Khalid, is how much, at least I, depend on timely news coming from Twitter and people's opinions. And not being on Twitter.
If it shows anything, it shows that people aren't really trusting the traditional media anymore.
Well, no, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
They need alternative media, in between quotations, alternative media, and Twitter is a very good source of that. Also a very good source of misinformation, which we'll talk about in a bit later on.
Yes, I think we should. But why don't we talk a little bit about an old video which has been resurfacing and making the rounds? And to provide some context, I texted you last week, or just at the beginning of Ramadan, and said, Khalid, did His Royal Highness Crown Prince give an interview on television today? I'm seeing this all over the news. Let's watch this video.
ولا يوجد شخص ثابت. القرآن الاجتهاد مستمر فيه، والسنة صلى الله عليه وسلم الاجتهاد مستمر فيها، وكل فتاوى حسب كل زمان ومكان وحسب كل فهم. يعني مثلا لما قبل 100 عام يفتي أحد المشايخ الأجلاء بفتوى معينة وهو لا يعرف مثلا الكرة الأرضية أنها مدورة أو لا، وهو لا يعرف قارات العالم، وهو لا يعرف التقنية وإلى آخره، ففتواه بناء على المعطيات والمعلومات اللي عنده وفهمه القرآن والسنة. لكن هذه تتغير في وضعنا الحالي.
So Khalid,
it's an old video. It's an oldie but goodie.
How old?
About 5 years old. So this video, or rather, this interview was conducted 5 years after the announcement of the Vision 2030.
Yes.
And you can think of it as it was the crown prince trying to give a status update to the general populace, showing them the achievements that were brought on by the program, social achievements, economic achievements, and talk about his fight against corruption and against extremism. So that was the gist of the interview. Now, what was funny was once you did send that clip to me, I started looking at different accounts that were actually disseminating this video, and funny enough, there was a lot of Indian accounts that were
I got it originally for an Indian account.
And actually, it was first post. I think it's a very big Indian news channel. They made a very substantial 20-minute segment just for this. I mean, they begrudgingly touted the successes of the new vision and of our crown prince. And they so happily said, "Yeah, but he needs to keep up the prospects if he's ever gonna make it."
5 years later.
Five years later, we have the Ukraine and Russia and the U.S. coming in and choosing Saudi as an international power player and power broker. So,
and we'll speak about that in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to say that it's very interesting that this video is reemerging. I actually think that it's very positive because even if it's in between quotation points, old news for Saudis and for people in the Gulf, it's very good that this is maybe garnering more attention from an international audience, because
I agree.
Very specifically, this segment emerging speaks about de-radicalization, what Saudi Arabia has done in the effort to reduce de-radicalization, not only within its society, but within the Muslim societies as a whole, and how the country has been leading efforts in terms of rehabilitation. And a lot of people they have this very backwards thinking view of Saudi Arabia. They still think 9/11. So this coming out, I think, is very important to continue changing perspectives on what is the situation like. But also, I was listening to this really interesting podcast, which I talked to you about last week, the Sean Ryan Show. So shout out to Sean Ryan, who's an ex-Navy SEALs, and he's got some good episodes. And he was speaking with a Jane Doe who didn't want to be named about the resurgence of Al-Qaeda in Europe. And there was obviously an attack last week in Germany. And now it's not being said whatsoever that it's Islamic terrorism or militantism. It's now people with mental health issues. This is what Europe is saying. And this Jane Doe, speaking on the show, was saying that actually Europe wants to hide its issues that it has with those lone wolves, does not want to address it. There's apparently a substantial chance of resurgence. And I think just in the light of everything, this is really valuable for more people to pay attention to. So thank you to the Indian community, if you're listening to us, for highlighting this and for this making the rounds on your social media. And I would really push anybody to go and watch the original full-length interview to learn more.
For sure. But just adding to that point you made with Europe and their issue with the far right, it was a couple of years back. I can't remember exactly who it was from the Emirati side, It was a very big conference. I believe it was the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I
could
know
be wrong.
exactly. It's a minister. It was a
Yeah.
senior diplomat. I know which
It was
video
a
you're
senior
talking about.
diplomat. Okay.
Let's link
Yeah.
it.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
I hate to say it, but he told you so.
Well, look what's happening now. Maybe we should make just a small detour speaking about Europe. And you know that Europe has just announced 800 billion, which is going to go towards rearmament, called Rearm Europe.
Well, I'd rather not comment on that. I actually see something concrete. They can talk all they want. They were saying they're gonna put boots on the grounds as well, and we're having peace talks right now. So yeah. I'll take anything they say with a grain of salt.
The interesting opinion. Now, next on our list that we wanted to cover, and there's a reason why we chose today to go through some background subjects, Twitter, etc. We're going to speak a little bit about Syria. And Khalid, you're going to take the lead on this topic.
Okay, so I'm gonna link a picture over here, and it's a bit of dark humor, you know. It says here that the poet Suleiman Ali, he was found dead in his apartment in Tartus, and the only reason they killed him was because he's an Alawite. And as we can clearly see, this is Elon Musk's dad. And I mean, what's been going on for the past 72 hours is an attack on Syria on all fronts. They were attacked from the coast by Alawites who were part of the old regime that did not submit their arms. They were allegedly attacked by the Kurds as well. And other than having a battle on the ground and in the air, there was also a battle on the internet for actual information. Because you were asking me earlier as well and telling me about all the videos coming out of all these Christians that were apparently being genocided,
Yes.
you know? And Elon Musk's using his own platform to toot his own horn is actually, you know, multiplying that as well to all kinds of people without checking information. And the reality on the ground is Christian leaders are saying there is no genocide. There is no ethnic cleansing. Whatever things that, look, I'm not saying people are not being hurt. I'm not saying people aren't getting killed. I'm saying it's not systematic. I'm saying there are no orders from the HTS to go and do these crimes. I urge my listeners to understand this is a country that is still in a civil war. Okay. This is a country that's been in this situation for over 10 years. Tensions are high. So it is expected, sadly, it is expected that there are some elements of revenge killings, of tit for tat that are going to happen. This does not mean this is systematic. This does not mean that it's been greenlit by the government. In fact, I personally believe that the reason why this was so easy disseminate all this misinformation is because the new Syrian government is about 3 months old. They don't have an official news channel where they can give out information, real things that are happening on the ground. And that leaves the area open to bad actors, to bots, to people with ill intent, and opportunists who just want to follow their own agenda and toot the trumpet of Muslim bad, brown people are killers. And I will not accept that. I've been trying very hard online to try and, especially with the Christian communities, I've been trying to calm them down, trying to do an outreach and telling them, look, don't listen to me. I obviously look like the person you dislike. Okay, follow these accounts who are vicars, who are Christian leaders in Syria. They're Arabs. They're Christian like you. Shouldn't you believe them when they tell you that everything is fine and they're actually being protected and there's no systematic killing? I don't know. What do you think?
But I mean, we'll agree. Look, I don't know as much as you do on this conflict. What I do think is that, fortunately, Syria continues to be a hybrid war, and today wars aren't only being fought on the ground; they're being fought online. Increasingly so, with things like disinformation, which creates a lot of confusion for people on all sides. What I think is very important to remember, like everywhere there's a war going on, there's been a huge vacuum of immigration and civilians who are now trying to rebuild their lives, and that people deserve stability in whatever shape or form that may be. They deserve a country which becomes stable. And I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow. I especially don't think that's going to happen with continued intervention from 10 different global parties. But I do think this is the direction that people should be looking at, as how can you enable your everyday Syrian person to rebuild their homeland and to live a life which is more or less stable and eventually return to normality. So this is what I hope.
And
it may sound, a little bit wishy-washy. And usually I have very strong opinions on things. This is one of the things where I just do not think that I'm sufficiently well informed to be able to provide a deep dive analysis. There's also some topics where we do not want to spread further misinformation.
I think that's what's important, yes.
Going forward.
Yeah.
And it's one of those topics which at the moment there is so much misinformation and so many different sides and factions vying for presence both online and offline. It's leading to a huge conflict. So what I hope is that this conflict gets resolved on the ground for the Syrian people, and that they do not see further intervention by other parties coming in.
I think that was eloquently put. I think we could both agree that Syrians should choose what happens in their country. Yes. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, for example, Julani, I don't like him. I don't trust him. Well, you know what? You don't live in Syria. Okay? You don't get to say that. Who are you to trust him? You're not even a head of states. You're just some armchair analysts, sitting there, sipping your coffee in, I don't know, Arizona or in Bristol. Who are you to say what they can and can't do?
Well, what is right? I mean, let's be honest here, Khalid. We're all armchair analysts. This is new media also today. But for people who haven't followed this conflict, I mean, it's been ongoing for over a decade now. There's been troubles in Syria since the Arab Spring. To be perfectly frank. So we're looking nearly at 15 years of tensions and sectarian conflicts in the country, and a country which has been destabilized, much like its neighbors. There's an opportunity now for reconstruction. It's up to the Syrian people to decide what works best and what doesn't. If that's a democracy, if that is another form of governance, as long as there's stability, there's an ability to have diplomacy and to create safety for all the various sects and people of Syria, this is the most important. Otherwise,
everyone deserves to live in peace, and they're trying very hard.
Exactly. But come on, let's be honest. The moment this new government came in, and you remember, the German foreign minister, Baerbock, went on a state visit. Did it not make as much the news because it made the news in Europe? We'll pin the photo. She's blurred out in the official photos released by the Syrian government. I think the moment that they blurred her out was not well appreciated by the European and Western communities. And on top of that, she tried to shake his hand upon arriving. And I remember commenting on this on Twitter by Europeans, and especially, we go back to feminists on International Women's Day, saying, how dare he not shake her hand? And I responded, how dare he, as a diplomat who studies protocol and etiquette when meeting foreign heads of state, did she not inform herself that her hand would probably not be shaken, and that there was a very polite way, which was to put her hand on her heart, and it would have meant exactly the same thing. So that was on her.
It was on her.
Yeah.
And as for them blurring her, well, maybe they just didn't like her after that handshake. Could have been.
It's very possible. They decided to blur her. I think personally it's a little bit ridiculous. They could have taken a big black pen and scratched her out.
You're going back to old Saudi, aren't you? Yeah, that's a big old Saudi. Okay. I see you. Okay.
We joke a little bit when it comes to that. But I think we can say one thing. I think Elon Musk is very much alive, present, and kicking. And people, be careful with what you consume. Because if you remember, very recently, the Georgia protests, there was this picture here of a woman covered in blood, saying that she had been beaten up while she was demonstrating for free Georgia. Well, it turns out this young lady was working for the US State Department and was absolutely not a Georgian student. So people, be careful what you consume and who it is, and fact check.
And you know what? I'll just go with the very old adage: if you don't have anything good to say, just say nothing at all.
And some things are none of your business also. Even I'm going to say that. Look, we comment on global news because, Khalid, this is our job also to do this. But on things in which we're perhaps not the best informed, or we merit the perspective of an expert coming from the outside, we will do increasingly. But also, if it's to speak about the workings of other people's countries, how about we each individually work on our own countries before going into savior mode?
Yeah, hats off to that. Because you know what you just said earlier? You said you don't have visibility. You don't really know much about that subject. So you let somebody else speak.
Exactly.
That's that. Look, we are commenting on other things, but we are giving our opinions yes. And as you said, if it's going to be something specific, I'll get an expert. But you'll never hear me comment on somebody's culture and belittle it,
Yes.
or try and say this way, your way of governance doesn't work. No, you'll always hear me say this works for you,
Exactly.
and as I understand, this is how it works. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and I often do get corrected.
Well, we all do, and this is how we learn. Moving on to our next and final subject, and this has also been a big source of disinformation, and there's a reason why we decided to wait a couple of days before
Yeah.
speaking about it, is there was another summit held in Jeddah a couple of days ago.
All right.
Zelensky came on the evening of the 10th and met with the crown prince. And then the next day, there was a summit between the Americans and the Ukrainian parties. And a lot of nothing has happened since then.
Well, if we're gonna do a bit of a rewind, we kind of expected there to be a lot of no. Saying a lot of nothing is a little bit too harsh, I think. No, there's not going to be a lot of things that said in public is the right word. You know, we agreed on it.
Okay, yes, I think between Russia and the US, I think between the US and the Ukraine, they've already washed their dirty laundry in public. There's not much to add.
Yeah.
There's actually not much to add. We all know what's been going on. So before the summit, let's recap. Intelligence was pulled. US intelligence was pulled out of the Ukraine. Elon Musk threatened, although then after the summit, he said that would never happen. But for a hot minute, everybody thought that Starlink was going to be turned off. And
Correct.
I think we know that if Starlink is going to be turned off, they may as well be fighting on donkeys.
Yeah, it's actually now the backbone of their internet, you know, and because it's not wired, it proved to be a very effective method of getting internet and disseminating it. And you know that a lot of it now is drone warfare, so it makes a lot of it has to do with the internet and being interconnected, right? So take off the backbone, and like you said, you might as well be fighting with sticks and stones.
I have to say, I'm personally disappointed that Elon didn't go through with it, because if there's a manner in which to resolve this conflict quickly, because and due to drone warfare, that would be the easiest way to do it. So I hope that maybe it keeps in the Trump arsenal. But on the back of those, I won't call it negotiations, because it's been a very tough couple of weeks between the Ukraine and the US. US and Trump have been basically really trying to pull themselves away from Ukraine. And as we said, they did this very publicly. Europe stepped up in between quotation marks. You're seeing this as their opportunity to step in and become relevant. We're not going to do a whole segment on Europe today. But why I'm mentioning it is because they came back to the table. So what was released as an outcome of this summit, which apparently lasted 10 hours?
Okay, so we'll just talk about them in broad strokes. You have a 30-day ceasefire.
Yeah.
You have a resumption of the intelligence and
Sharing.
intelligence sharing and rearming Ukraine. It wasn't said what arms are going to be rearmed, so we'll put that with an asterisk right there. It's also, there was the critical minerals deal, so again, we'll put a little asterisk next to it.
Well, that infamous critical minerals deal that Zelensky was supposed to go and and side with Trump, and where then Trump and Rubio and Vance said it's absolutely off the table. So as a back of his negotiations, apparently it's back on the table.
And last but not least, apparently there is from both sides an agreement that there needs to be an immediate stop to hostilities. So an immediate peace negotiation. We're not calling this a peace negotiation, but the next following steps need to lead towards peace negotiations. So as we said earlier, I thought we were very clear there's going to be a memorandum of understanding. I think they finally reached that framework right now. At least I hope so.
Well, it's important to say because at the time when we're recording this, so we're the 13th, Vitkov today is flying a team to Moscow. Which in itself, again, is quite, I wouldn't say historical, because obviously he went with a prisoner exchange before the meeting between the US and Russia. But he's sending a team.
It's substantial.
But it's substantial. There was also yesterday, when we're speaking about intelligence sharing, the head of the FSB and the head of the CIA have also agreed to look at normalizing their relationship and sharing, information which could be of interest to both countries. Now, the big question is the ceasefire. Can it happen? I'm sure it can happen. That isn't an issue. Now the question is can and be maintained? And the big issue, which nobody is really speaking about, and definitely the US and Ukraine won't disclose, is whether the current regime can stay in place in Ukraine or not.
No. I mean, look, come on. We can both agree that letting the current regime, and when I say current regime, I don't just mean Zelensky. I mean his entire cabinet.
We're not just speaking about Zelensky. We're speaking about the whole cabinet and everybody, the presidential office, everybody.
Even the T-boy, everybody.
Even the T-boy.
No, I'm being serious. Okay, I'm a bit sarcastic, but I need to be serious about this. I mean, look, let's look at facts, okay? They claim to be fighting for democracy's sake, right? But Zelensky had emergency powers where he stopped martial law and emergency powers, and he stopped all his opposition from speaking. He jailed his oppositions under these draconian laws, and I really think that the Russians will push for not only a new general election, but they definitely want all of these detractors of Zelensky to be pushed up, whatever parties they are.
Look, I think it's very important now from a cultural standpoint to speak about not just peace, not just a ceasefire, but what is lasting peace. And like with many conflicts in the world, this conflict runs far deeper than 2014 or 2022. There's been, as I've said before, there's been a genocide of anything which is Russian culture, Russian language since much before. Then you have to look at about 1,000 years of history, and history has been also rewritten now. So there needs to be a lot of education from what's going to happen next. It's, however, very positive that there are talks and negotiations which are happening. We've spoken about this before. I don't think this is going to be resolved next week or in 2 weeks or in a couple of weeks. We all know also ceasefires are complicated things. Yeah. Rubio said yesterday that they were going to maybe monitor them from space. The geek in me was like, yes, they're outwardly talking about now what type of space technologies they're using to spy on us. So apparently it's going to be monitored through satellites.
And it's not really new technology.
No, it's not new technologies. It's just that we're actually actively saying this. We're going to be monitoring all of this from space, and I think it's going to be a work in progress. And we're going to see what happens. But I can say that I really hope that Europe does not get involved. And this is wishful thinking, but I really think that Europe should just focus on itself, because Europe is just going to be a detractor and a problem causer in this, because it's going all in on Ukraine. And some factions have been saying that some parts of both parties, Ukraine and Europe, are basically hoping to wait this conflict out until the end of the Trump administration.
I think that's wishful thinking. I don't think. Look, when I say I don't think, all the data points towards this not lasting for too long. You keep on asking me in our private conversations, okay, when do you think this is going to be over? And I always tell you, what's the word I always use? Soon.
Yes.
I always say soon, because I don't like to give a number, pulled out of the ether. But it's because, look, without getting too complicated, if Europe stops arming the Ukrainians, it's gonna stop. It's that simple. It's that simple.
I 100% agree.
And when I say they stop arming them, I don't just mean with weapons and with technology and what have you. No, I mean even these security companies, these mercenaries. They're talking about North Koreans going and working with the Russians, and I'm seeing pictures today of Congolese people going and with Ukrainian flags on them. Come on, So
look at what's happening in Chad and Mauritania. That's for another day, guys. I think Khalid has just opened the can of worms. I was going to say, on this note, everybody, thank you so much for listening to us. But I just like to highlight something. We did something super cool last Friday, which we're probably going to do at least once or twice a week. We have the weekly podcast recording, the video, which you're listening to now. But last week we went on Spaces. We're going to be doing this much more frequently, once or twice a week. It's going to be really like being on the phone with us. So expect a little bit of chaos. Really probably more unfiltered and unbridled conversation. And
a little bit less reserved. I like that.
And we want you to join in, because we're going to let listeners come in, speak, ask questions, and interact. We want your interaction. So we'll be posting the day off when we're going to be doing Spaces, but make sure to follow us again on Twitter. This is Khalid's handle. This is my new handle. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and everywhere else.